We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car backed, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
Then he spoke German to the white German person. And when he turned to me, this person spoke to me in English. And you know what? I was really so sad because I've spent many years to learn the German language and I can't speak to him in German. But then when he turns to me, he speaks to me in English. I replied to this person in Lusoga. And then he complained, I don't understand your language you're speaking. And I told him, yes, I'm speaking Lusoga. And I thought maybe since you spoke to me in English, I don't understand English. I only understand German and Lusoga. So I spoke to him in Lusoga. And then we had to go back to German. So you see, that's language. I spoke his language. He could not speak my mother tongue language. Why is it that many European people don't bother to speak our language when they come to Africa? Yet, they use the German language or the English language to colonize us.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, our dear listeners, welcome back again on this wonderful podcast. It is me, your host, Otako. Welcome to Hear My True Story podcast, where we share our personal stories, experiences, where we share our own stories. In this wonderful episode, we shall talk about how the colonialism is solved. Use the language to suppress our languages. So we are going to share our own experiences, how this affected us to love or to really appreciate our languages. Yeah. So if you want to know more about that, how the colonial perspective of language has been used to suppress other African languages, or maybe also to make African people be belittled, stay on this wonderful podcast.
With you every week. Hear my true story.
Jumbo, 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 jumbo. Sisi twagera mu kibira, sisi okulonga ebibala, sisi twale tubiroga, sisi betulengere esanja, sisi byalindere nnyo, sisi ng'atenga gwanvu, sisi betugoba emisinde, sisi betukaba n'amaziga, sisi mwesirikira abaana, sisi sijja kubalya, sisi nja kulya balya abakulu, sisi abagenda n'emugga. Jambo, 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 jambo. Sisi, hey, sisi, hey, sisi, hey, jambo, 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 jambo. Sisi twagera mu kibira, sisi okulonga ebibala, sisi twali tubironga, sisi netulengera essajja, sisi yalendera ennyo, sisi ate nga ggwanvu, sisi neritugoba emisinde, sisi netukaba n'amaziga, sisi mwesirikira abaana, sisi sijja kubalya, sisi njakulya balya abakulu, sisi abagenda n'ebuka.
I don't have a voice. You know, I lost my voice. I lost my voice. I think I lost my voice when I came to Germany.
Oh my God.
Maybe.
Otako, when did you really sing?
I sing when I'm in a bathroom. Sometimes when I'm on my bed, in my head. Actually, most times when I think about this song, it is really perfect in my head. But the moment I open my mouth like this to speak or to sing it out, the voice goes lost.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, am I a musician or am I a spoken word person? I don't know.
And then which answer did you find?
I found out that maybe I'm a dancer. Because I can't dance well to your music when you play it. And, I mean, how many languages do you speak in that song, that exact song? Sisi, Firmi, Yambo.
Wow. It's a good question. Actually, the first language I can recognize is Luganda.
Mm-hmm.
Then there was Ludama. And there was a language also from Tororo, Lunyoro, Aferimi Yambo.
Is there also a word in Swahili? Jambo, Jambo.
Yeah, Jambo, yeah, the Swahili language, yeah.
Wow.
Jambo.
How, my dear listeners, welcome to Hear My True Story podcast. Wow. Today I have Edwin Matovu again on this wonderful episode. Yeah, please, you can introduce yourself so the audience knows who is behind the microphone, and then you'll give the our next guest.
Yeah, my name is Edwin Matovu. Yeah, and I'm back in action.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us again.
And also accompanied by Timothy.
Yeah,
Ofono.
Yeah, Timothy Ofono. Thank you so much for also joining us on this wonderful podcast. Wow. What makes this really a wonderful thing today is that we are going to speak about how the Europeans use their language to suppress our language. This is it. Before I tell you this, I want to share with you my personal story. So when I moved here to Germany, I was supposed to learn Germany. Yeah. I mean the language, German. Then one day I met a friend of mine. So we are speaking in German. This person was German, so I was speaking with him in German language. So as we were talking, conversing in German language, and then comes a friend of this person. So when that person joined us, then we are three. Then he spoke German to the white German person, And when he turned to me, this person spoke to me in English. And you know what? I was really so sad because I've spent many years to learn the German language and I can speak to him in German. But then when he turns to me, he speaks to me in English. I replied to this person in Lusoga. And then he complained, I don't understand your language you're speaking. And I told him, yes, I'm speaking Lusoga. And I thought maybe since you spoke to me in English, I don't understand English. I only understand German and Lusoga. So I spoke to him in Lusoga. And then we had to go back to German. So you see, that's language. I spoke his language. He could not speak my mother tongue language. Why is it that many European people don't bother to speak our language when they come to Africa? Yet, they use the German language or the English language to colonize us. How did the Europeans use language to really suppress our languages? We are not experts on the podcast. Maybe you can share our experience, how the English language or maybe European languages were used to suppress us. You sing music, use English. Why do you use English mixed with other languages?
Actually, this is a question when you bring this topic about colonialism. It's really kind of a topic which is very, very complex, and
we can just break into our own understanding. So you sing music here, you do music, you do music in languages that are more than one, but you mix always English. Why?
Actually, because that question is because English is like part of us since we're young. When you start going to school in Uganda, one of the languages, I speak not even one of the languages. The language we use in school from kindergarten is English. So we study everything in English. If it is mathematics, if it is biology, chemistry, history, everything, it is in English. But actually we find it more challenging. That's why I think when you look into the education system in Uganda, and you come to compare it to the education system in Germany, it is really kind of a different thing, because here they speak Deutsch from home. This is environment, everything is speaking Deutsch. And then when they go to school, they learn everything in Deutsch, which I think in the layman thinking, as I'm thinking right now, it is more easier than we who speak our mother tongue languages at home, with our parents, with the community speaking Luganda. And when I start going to school, that's why then I have to learn a language. That's the first step. Learn a language, and through that language, you learn the content. I don't know if I'm really making myself clear.
You are really confusing me. You're making me to be a confuser.
Yeah. So what's confusing you?
You are really confusing. You are really. I just asked you a simple question. Why do you think English and then you mix it with?
Yeah,
I mean, your songs.
I'm giving you the background why I use English in my song somehow, somewhere, because it is part of my life. Because I grew up speaking first, learning English, using it, writing, everything. So it is part of me. So even right now, you find me speaking Luganda, and all of a sudden I mention an English word within, because it came to the point, because of the topic you brought, because of colonialism, English became part of Ugandans. Every Ugandan who have gone to school have been affected by using this language. So when you're thinking, and when you have this thinking, of course the languages you're thinking too, many people say when you start thinking in Deutsch, then you're learning Deutsch. But in Uganda, when you're thinking in Luganda and English. So you're thinking two languages. So you find ourselves even sometimes confused, because you think in English and at the same time you think in Luganda, because in Luganda I use it in community and family, and then in the school it's English. And from day one, it is school up to now, learning. So that's why when you hear me singing or composing, I think in 2 languages most of the time.
So, in simple, is to say that when Africa was colonized by European countries, they used the language in education to suppress these other languages because there's no any African language, like for example in Uganda, that is used in schools at high level of education, apart from Swahili.
Actually, our languages are called vernacular. Up to now, I don't know the meaning of vernacular. Up to now, I'm not understanding. Because when I used to speak Luganda in school, it's Spanishable, and they call it, why do you have to speak vernacular? And up to now, I don't know the meaning of vernacular. And I think you pass through the same system, you know they used to call it vernacular. Do you know the meaning of vernacular?
Speaking a local language that is not... I mean, what's the local? Yeah, it is really annoying that when when the colonialists came to Africa, and then they reach the country like Uganda, they established that you can be a class of educated if you speak English, or if you speak French, or if you speak German, or if you speak Portuguese, or you speak Spanish. That's when they take you to be educated. Then when they use language in the education, then these African, Ugandan languages were taken out of the education system. And that's how a language is killed. Because it's not taught. As Ugandans or as Africans, our education system was oral education system where we could pass on information orally from one generation to another. When the Europeans came, they killed the oral system of education. They suppressed it. And then Africans, as Ugandans, we remained with music and storytelling where we could pass our information. And that also has suppressed that, you have a story, then write it, but you can't write it in your Muttersprache. You can't write it in your mother tongue language. Then the story vanishes. That's how the Europeans used the education system, to kill the African languages. I personally, I can speak over 5 languages, but I cannot write over 5 languages because I don't have the written practice. I was not taught to write my mother tongue language. Yeah, so to write Lusoga, I really suffer to write it. And maybe other people now are learning it, but that's how the colonial system, how the colonialists really used language, specific language, because through language, that's how you can become powerful.
Actually, just to clear the information that they brought the system of education we have in Uganda, so that formal education, they are the one who brought it. As you said before, that we used to have the oral education, which was more practice, observing, because there's this statement, learn as you do. That's our methodology of learning from our ancestors. But when the formal education came, then that's come with reading and writing. That's why, as you said before, that most of us, we can speak our language, but we cannot write because we never had a chance of writing our languages, because by the time we started writing, reading, we do everything in English. So you find ourselves, we are mediocres. Sorry to say, but that's what we are. Can you write Lusoga? Can you?
I mean, I cannot really write Lusoga, but I can write German now. I can also write English. And some of my brothers and sisters are writing Chinese. So who are you? To be really confused. Some are writing Russian.
So who are you?
It's annoying. Imperialism and colonialism, that's what is killing the African languages. That's my personal experience. I don't know about Timothy, what you say about it, but I find it is through education that our languages are killed. Because the Europeans brought their language through education.
It's quite sad. I don't really know the history of instituting English, but maybe to my understanding here, I might say probably it was a language brought about to create a medium of communication. And in between, they must have found it that it is the best among all other languages that were found, that originally found in Uganda. I also grew up going to school. To the school I went to, I don't remember learning a Luganda alphabet or letters.
Or Jap.
Neither did I learn any Swahili song in the nursery. I sang the Baba Black Sheep.
Which is really a racist kind of like song. Baba Black Sheep. What does that song go? I don't know. What is the meaning?
I never know.
Yeah, I mean, you see, that's how people used to kill our languages.
Of course. And surprisingly, even after these years, you still find out that in school the teachers would like Matovu said, Mr. Matovu said that he was always punished for speaking his mother tongue, regarded to be a local or a vernacular. I don't know what vernacular is.
I don't know too. Neither of us know. Maybe there are listeners who understand the history of Africa and how language has been destroyed by the European colonialism and up to date. When people talk about that we are no longer colonized in Africa, I joke when right now in universities, someone is given a certificate of German or English or Spanish, and then they take him as educated person. And when they come and they really come to Europe here, and then they realize, oh, my language is important than the languages that I learn. I don't know you guys about your experience, but for me that's how I feel.
I was stunned when the ministry sent me a recognition of a disclaimer for making a lesser grade of my documents. They actually meant, we can see from the languages you studied, you have a foreign language, which is English, but you don't have a mother tongue. In my country, I thought if I learned English, that's the main thing above all. And the rest will come next.
But then you come to Europe, English is not important for you because you're not part of it.
It doesn't work.
Yeah. So, Matov, what do you say about how the power of language has been exploited through colonialism and it has really put down other African languages?
I think what we have to do, because our generation, what I'm talking about, like, of course, from long time ago up to now, that if we still have English as the medium of communication to learn the content like biology, chemistry, and other thing, that impact, it will still stay for a long time. So we need to find, it is, I cannot say it's easy, and it will never be easy because it is strong, because as I'm talking now, most of the content people are creating now, people, the way they think, now we are thinking in English. So actually we're becoming, as I was studying history, there's this method called assimilation method. The assimilation
policy.
Yeah, the policy. It's like we are brainwashed that when you speak the language, actually it's not a matter of speaking the language. It affects the thinking. And the thinking, it goes to the 3-dimension
culture.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about thinking now here. The thinking aspect, that's the brain and everything, how it works. Then we come back to the soul, to the heart, to the rhythm, how it works with your body. That's the breathing, that's the heartbeats and everything. Emotions, language is part of it. And after that, I can put it to the physical body. The physical body of like the movements, how our body reacts and everything. Most of the time. So this 3 dimension of a human being, the language is part and parcel of everything. If I want to express, if you want to know the reasoning of a person, we use communication. That's the speech. That's the language. The way I talk determines someone can understand, okay, this is the level of education or this is the level of understanding of this person. And if I have emotions, I want to express, I use a language and someone also can witness through the language my emotions, how I feel. Even when you see the way when I'm talking through this, giving gestures, I'm using the body, bringing it out of the language, but also using the body. So a language is very powerful for a human being, and it affects every part of our body. Speech and language is very, very vital. And when colonialism came and they brought English, for example, in Uganda, system you're using English, and it's the official language, the more we think, the more we speak the language, we're becoming Ugandans by color, to say, but actually English people through the language. I don't know if I make myself.
I mean, I understand you because just language was just a good tool to destroy the cultures. And when you talk about the mind and everything, the culture, how we live our life, how we identify ourselves. Because the language was used, the colonial languages were used to destroy the African languages, plus their cultures, plus their practices, plus the way we think, the way we move, the way we identify ourselves.
Yeah. And this goes really deep because when you look into the language, we come to the details of everything. Because when I'm used to speak a language and when I hear other languages, because the community is used to the, giving an example like these educated people, they speak the way they do things. Just to give an example, like in Uganda, people are educated. Those are the people who are punctual. Those are the people who are reliable. Those are the people who have work. Those are the people who are leaders. Those are the people who are doctors. So the way their life, their way of living is kind of different from the people who actually never went to school. Have you realized that?
Yeah, I know. I've realized that because I want. Maybe people are listening to this wonderful podcast. Some of them are from Europe. They'll be shocked when they go to African continent and they find that we speak their languages better than them, and they find that their families in Africa, or maybe I'll be specific in Uganda, where their children are living in Uganda, but they cannot speak any Ugandan language, but they speak European languages. They speak English, they speak Spanish, they speak French, they speak German, they speak Portuguese, they speak Italian, although they cannot speak their mother tongue language. That's how strong colonialism is still existing.
Actually, I have a relative, kind of a close relative, and he's having kids, and the kids were taught English from the beginning. And actually, when I was asking why are these kids not really taught our mother language, my mother tongue language, the answer was very easy. It is local, it is barbaric, and the world, we are global, we are civilized. So English is civilized. It shows you are at a certain level of life. You are class. In fact, you are classic.
Yeah, I mean, just to give a highlight to our dear listeners, you see, when the Europeans came to Africa to really colonize African countries, one of the things they said, the African languages are barbaric languages. They are for people who are not civilized, and they put this in the education system. And up to date, people are told your language is a barbaric language. It is not civilized. That's where you find someone like your relative teaching their children European languages. and they don't want to relate with African languages.
And this is really, really strong, and I feel it's really terrible because the language is where it's a medium of communication. So if, for example, I come here to German, people like professions, I know many people, Ugandans who came here, we are really professionals in their fields. And because of the language, they lost self-esteem. They feel shy. Even they become sick because they can't even express themselves. They can't add on the community. But before coming to here, there were people of importance, people who are like innovators, people who are like the good ideas, people who are like had good life, people who are happy. But when you come here, when you go to a foreign country and you can't express yourself, actually you become shy, and you end up like all your profession, all your skills, all your talent, it doesn't even matter, cease to matter, because you can't use them because of communication. As you know, communication is very vital in our lives. If I can't explain my talent, if I can't explain my skill, so no one values me. So we end up actually living in the depressive life. We are depressed doing something because you end up being surviving on something even you don't want to do. You end up doing, you becoming, how can I rephrase it, not like to sound really mean. There's kind of like human labor. You end up doing this thing of lifting things, things there, works of people who don't use the brains, like you end up being assistants.
Physical labor.
Yeah, the physical labor. You lift this thing, gun clean there, gun do. Actually, we come with here, we come with your degrees, we come with experience, you come with everything. But because of the language, you end up becoming nonsense. And you fear everyone, you fear kid, you fear everything because of that.
Yeah, that's the point why African parents who are living maybe in Africa or maybe here they are teaching their children these European languages, because it's the power of colonialism, it's the power of being superior colonialism that is still up to date.
Hit subscribe and don't miss the next episode. Hear my true story.
As we speak now, there's still a new partition of Africa, where people now are saying, which side is Africa? Is it for democracy or is it for dictators? Now they are dividing it. Now languages are also being used. Different countries can cooperate with France because they speak the Francophone. It's called Afrophone, Francophone countries, and also Anglophone countries. We are divided by language. Yeah. When we come here to Europe, we are all from the African continent, but we are divided. People who speak French are easier to communicate with other people who speak French from the same continent. We are divided because of language. So language was also used in Africa to divide us. So when they came to the Berlin Conference, they divided the African borders. The African, Africa was partitioned. So they partitioned us according to language. So they partitioned, the Germans took Tanganyika because Tanzania were speaking German. And then the British took Uganda and Kenya, and they took because they are speaking English. You get that? So they took us. So also the language, the Europeans used their language to partition Africa. You see how language was dividing from just us to speak their language, but also they partitioned us. They divide us, divide and rule. It was the only way to rule Africa, by dividing us by language. That's what I can say. That's how language was used in colonialism. That's how we were divided and ruled. Because of that, people were, we had in Africa the so-called civil, the religious wars within Africa during colonialism. These were driven by religion, but also language. You get that? When the French came, and then the British came, And then we Africans, we see all these are white men. And then they say, no, for us to speaking French, these are speaking Spanish. So you either work with the French, or you work with the Spanish, or you work with the English, or you work with the Germans. And we are divided. And to date, we have over 50 languages, but none of the 50 languages can make you survive in Britain. You can't survive in Britain with your African language. They'll push you out. You can't survive in Germany with your African language. They push you out. However much they say, yeah, these are beautiful, wonderful languages, but they will push you out. The system does not accept us. The period.
And now in the sense, we get to question, after spending all these years in school, learning English, and now we land in Germany. And the case is, we have to learn the language, which is not English again.
Yeah. And you can't go with it and say, I'm speaking English, so I can get a job. They'll push you out. They will tell you, no, we need you to have a C1 European language level of English.
Yeah, actually, that's right. I had a brother who had to go to study his master's, but he had to do exams in English. And you know, our system started from kindergarten to university. He had even bachelor's in English, but he had to go for master to first do a test of English to go and do the master.
So, anyway, the English people can't trust our English. Yeah. They have to level it with the European English certificate level, which is C1.
Yeah. Actually, also this, I think I can take it also back to the way we are. Like a country like Uganda, imagine having over 56 tribes. And that in a small kind of sense of reasoning, I can see these tribes. Every tribe, just to say, they look bals, they have their culture, they have their heritage, they have their language, they have their style of living and their language, which in a small sense can be defined as a nation. It's also a state in its own. If they are arranged well, that's the state. It's its own. But you find like there are this kind of 56 tribes in one small territory, of which earlier you said it makes it difficult for a country like Uganda to unite one and to influence, because the world.
Let me just break you. Yeah. That problem of artificial borders came after the scramble and partition of Africa in Berlin. You get that? Africa was a continent that was based on ethnic groups. You get that? The ethnic groups that were speaking a particular language. For example, Buganda, Bantu people were speaking a language that they understand each other. So you could find a chunk of territory under one kingdom. You go to Bunyoro, is another part of that Senegal. When you go to South Africa, they were also divided in different ethnic groups and kingdoms. But then the moment the artificial borders came in during the partition that was based on European languages, when the English said, we have been in this part of African continent, so we are taking that chunk to be ours, we expect them to speak English. So they partition us. So they put these artificial borders. These borders that were put there were never borders there in Africa. There are things that were put there by Europeans based on their languages. The Portuguese say, we are taking this part because we speak Portuguese.
But of course, from the beginning, if you look into it, that even when you see in Europe, it was like, by that time it was a struggle to capture territories, because when you look into Great Britain, what is Great Britain? There are many countries which are involved. There are many, even Scotland still reporting to UK. And if I'm not mistaken, Wales is still reporting to UK. They are still governed by the UK. So it was like a battle, like to conquer, because one of the first interests of any nation is to take care of their interests.
And it's their language, to promote their language.
Of course. So when you look into the days of the Napoleons and the great warriors of the nations, like it was to conquer our country, to be big. It was a struggle for power. who's stronger, which country is stronger, which is of course happening even right now, but in the kind of how can I say it? In a kind of, I don't want to use this word modern way, but in a kind of a liberal way.
No, it's not liberal. It's neocolonialism.
No, of course. Why am I?
To be clear, it's neocolonialism where people are using the language.
Yeah, I'm saying, why am I using the liberal means of capturing states that they are not aggressive? They are not like long time ago. You have to go with guns. You have to go with spears. You kill people and then you conquer the land. Now it's a battle of economics. It's a battle of innovations. It's a battle of technology. It's a battle of military machinery. So it's a battle of since the generation of industrialization brought many people, the innovation bringing more this kind of capturing. Of course, that's also colonialism, but in kind of a liberal way. Who is having resources, and which resources do we need to conquer? So it's about power. So because my main point is what can we do? Because my one point, what can we do at least to reach this kind of level of making a change? Because we studied this at the universities, in primary and secondary, history, and even witnessing experiences. And sometimes when the people have had it along, and it's kind of now sounding like more lamentations without actions. So the question needs to come to Otako's table, Edwin's table, Mr. Fono's table. What can we do at least to reach what we want? If we have actually the same goal, many people have different goals.
Yeah, maybe it can also go to anyone listening. If you're listening to this podcast and you say, wow, these guys are maybe meandering around, or maybe they are not clear on what point it is. I mean, personally, I am trying to think about what can we do. Yeah. But as long as we cannot use our languages, we can't defend our cultures. Yeah. That means we cannot also defend our power in this global world at the moment. I feel so sad to hear that my brothers and sisters back home in Uganda or in Africa, some of them are now learning Chinese because China is investing a lot in Africa, and one of their terms is that our language has to be taught in Africa. The children need to learn Chinese. It's really upset because we can't even learn our mother tongue language, but we are being forced by even English up now. They're forcing us to learn this language back home. And then we come here, we are not part of it. You need also again to satisfy us so that we are able to speak the language by sitting a test of their from their countries, you know.
It's kind of like a power shift now becoming to economy. Economy now takes the world. So who is having the economy? So which means that a country which has really roots, big, good foundation, now they are more favorable to work on themselves. Because when you go back to history, China was one of the poorest countries. Those Asian tigers, the Hong Kongs, we used to call them Asian tigers, like Hong Kongs and the Taiwans, they were poor. But when you look into which policies did they make to make their countries now coming to the so top called countries to control the world? Which kind of policies? What can we learn from them that they revamped from being a poor, a more used, manipulated country to the country actually with influence now? So these are the lessons as we Africans we have to look into and say which factors, which elements are they similar with China, which countries which are really developed, which kind of policies do they use which are favorable to our kind of environment and society so that we can save. Because for a country like Uganda, we don't even need to come to this competition. We don't reach there. But our battle comes back to save our own.
Yeah, by one, saving our language, which language we speak. One, if we spoke our language as Swahili as East Africa, we would defend East Africa because we would understand what we're talking about. We have a history about the Swahili language. We know how this language came into existence, and we really have touched to it than the English language or maybe than the German or the French. Yeah. So when I go to a country like Rwanda and they are speaking Kinyarwanda, and that's clear, So I have to learn Kinyarwanda to live and work and do investment in Rwanda. I learn Kinyarwanda. Or if we come to Uganda, I say, yeah, to learn or to live in Uganda, I need to learn Luganda. Egal verse. For me, I can say at right now is that language is the only key we have. After coming to Germany and living in a life where I'm put out because I can't speak good Deutsch, I would suggest that anyone who's listening to the podcast and you're not maybe in Germany and you're back home in Africa or maybe an Asian country, just appreciate your language because it is upset when you come to countries like here and your language is gone. You can't speak it.
This moment brings me back to certain time back when an argument sparked out in one of the classes I was attending because we realized as foreigners we lacked the medium of immediate communication of what exactly we feel or express what exactly is on our minds. And as by the way, everybody found a group that at least shared a common language.
Although all of you were like coming from one continent, Africa.
Yeah. And it happened, those who spoke French engaged so much within themselves, and us who came from East Africa, I had to look for people who speak Swahili. But as we spoke, of course, in the class, we always shared German as a common language. The teacher would give an improvision that someone uses English to explain something. But then it came to a point where sometimes, it's just too much. And we are talking one-to-one, not with the German, and we're speaking Swahili. Suddenly someone's gets out of their peaceful zone, and they complain about us speaking our own language. And now it didn't matter to what extent we felt like. It didn't matter whether we didn't feel good, whether we didn't express ourselves in between us, understood each other, but it was about them getting to know what is this one talking about. So that like what you said, that what Adrian said, that it keeps you out. We felt at some point we were out of the box. And now the only time was to share between us with the language, only for the free time, talk in between us, but somebody felt offended. And then in between, we get to say, but by the way, we speak German, but this is not standard German. There is a dialect. One of the instructors says, yeah, because we are proud. And now it brings me back immediately to my language. Why can't I be proud of it? What makes me feel ashamed of my identity? That's how they identify themselves. You want to be here? That's the rightful way. Learn their language. Or else, there is no other way. It's you who wants. So, Africans don't lose anything. If China wants to conduct business, they should come, find what is there. If they're speaking Swahili, let them learn it. You want to transact between Kenyans. Why would you come? You want to tell them to learn Chinese to transact with you. You are the one who wants to conduct business there.
Yeah, you are right, because like what you said, even in your class you had your boss coming, you have many people coming from the African continent, and then you are divided based on European languages. Those who speak French, those who speak Spanish, those who speak Portuguese, those who speak English. You are all divided together depending on where you speak from. And then when you speak your languages like Swahili that people don't understand, and they're like, we are feeling discriminated because you guys are speaking a language that we don't understand. And then you ask them, okay, you are speaking German, I don't understand the German language, and I'm here in Germany. And they're like, yeah, because we are proud. The point that, why are we not proud? Are we, I don't know.
Actually, what I've got to realize is this statement says a concept called Big Brother syndrome. What do you bring on table? It's like the family setting in Uganda. When the father speaks, others you have to follow. That is the hierarchy. So my brother here, Timo, saying if the Chinas want to make any transaction in Uganda or in Kenya and they speak Swahili, for the Chinese to learn Swahili and then they do this transaction, they come actually in the spirit for them, in quotes, in the spirit of helping. And you a beggar. A beggar has no choice. So I'm helping you. So which means if I'm helping you, it's you to put the effort to learn what we do. We inspire you, not the opposite. So it is in a spirit complex mentality that Africans or the Germans or the Americans, when they are talking about the issues concerning Africa, they talk like fathers. They don't talk like kids.
So, in a simple thing, you're saying that we as African people from the African continent or the African continent, on the dining table, it behaves like food to be eaten.
Your kids, just in the family setting, if you're a father, we grew up in this community of like the father used to even have his chair on the dining. So you just take in this aspect that Europeans, Americans, the Chinese now are sitting on the dining. So African continent, please, you're on the ground, your food you eaten there, even you don't get the meat, you get only the soup. So you don't expect your father to come down there to talk to you. That's the mentality of this thing. Maybe my brother Timo wants to say something about it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I understand what you're talking about. Like, if we, the people with our languages, we used to use our languages to make us superior, to make us strong, to be proud of them. So instead of being shy about our language, we shall not survive in the jungle of the strong people. So if our languages behave like grass in the jungle, they will be eaten by cows. So we need also to behave like lions in the jungle so that our languages can survive. I think so. But anyway, I don't know what Timo says about it. Because of time, I think we will bring this to conclusion.
I'll just bring a short example of the former colonial German colonies. We know Tanzania of being colonized by German. We know the bits of the southern part of Africa being colonized by the Germans. But they did away with it. Has there not been development? It's quite a visible thing that it's not about the language, that if they come, we have to eat from the chunks. We can also fight out of it. They come, they want resources. If it's no, they have to do it. I mean, it's a win-win. In the sense, but otherwise with the language, it's not a choice. It's a must.
They have to speak our language.
They have to.
Actually, the reality is they have to. If this kind of like it's like when you say the statement, life is easy. You just need to be happy, just laugh. But actually, in reality, it's good, but in reality, it's different. The thing is, what I want to put you guys to look into, these people, they don't care about your lives, your countries. For them, what they care about, their national interests. When they come to Tanzania, when they come to Kenya, for any transaction, what comes in their head? To get profits. And that's the principle of capitalism. They don't have that kind of humor you're talking about as Ubuntu, but they feel sympathy. Of course, it will come back to we with the mentality. What do we consume? Everything we consume come from there, from their homes, from their countries. So you end up from the beginning consuming their products, the way you think, what inspires you, who inspires you. If you can ask, you do a kind of a case study. Go to your village. Talk about simple thing. If you're doing theater, drama, comedy, go to those comedians in Uganda and ask who inspires you. No one, if he wants to sound civil, educated, will mention about a Ugandan comedian. They will start with global American comedians, because what comes on their face that these people are great. We have to. They set the standards, and for us, what you're saying that you guys, if they want to do like fuel case, if they want to get fuel, if they get raw materials from Africa, they have to learn our language and they use that. But the question is, are the Ugandans, are the Africans standing those shoes of making those kind of statements? Because it's not by force. What do you bring on the table? Which kind of mentality do you have? So it's a mentality battle.
Yeah, but the thing is that as we try to say, we try to bring back our languages, and we can't because of the fact that we are partitioned, not depending on the language that are ours. We are partitioned depending on their languages. That's why it is hard for us to go back and say, no, let's partition ourselves depending on the language. Because people in African countries, people who in Rwanda will speak a language that a person from Uganda understands, and they also understand each other the same language in Rwanda. In Uganda, in Rwanda. There's Luo in Uganda, there's Luo in Kenya. It's the same language, you know. Then you cross to other parts of South Sudan, you get that. All these languages, the Europeans use the language and they divided us. And we at the point, I don't think we can do anything other than maybe going back to the table again.
With who? That's the question.
With the same colonialists.
And you discuss about what?
And tell them, you learn our language. You can't come to Africa to work in an African continent without learning an African language. That's the end of the story.
Now we'll tell our listeners to do the homework. We've sent everyone to do the homework.
Our dear listeners, this has been a freestyle conversation from our own experiences, because when we come to Europe, right now, personally, I live in Germany, and I've really suffered with just learning the German language to be able even to be accepted in a society. However much I speak a German language as a black person, still I want to fit into the system, regardless how much I speak it. Although the Germany system wants me to learn the language so that I can integrate. But that does not make me a German.
Now we know lots of you that are out there who have also experienced the same. Please drop your comments on the Twitter.
You can write something, comment, because it's really interesting for us to know there are people listening to the podcast. Perhaps there are no people listening to the podcast, but send us some messages and say, you guys, we listen to you.
Actually, this conversation has really made me have a conclusion. And actually, if that happens, what Mr. Otagode also said, that we need to sit on the table, We tell the Europeans, tell the Americans, all people doesn't control. But guys, let's be fair. Let's be fair. We have learned your languages for many years. Now it's your time to learn our languages. I'll be very glad if that time comes.
Yeah, and if you are, if you're a listener and you're in favor of saying, Europeans, Asians, Arabs, if you're coming to an African continent, learn our language. Please leave us a comment on this wonderful episode. That's the thing. And to tell anyone from the African continent, however much you speak a European language and you're a black person, it is not going to make you a white person. These people will not accept you however much you speak their language perfectly. And for those who are born in Europe, and because you are Europeans, although you are black, my friend, you ask yourself, how is it going to be if these people are really not accepting me? I'm sorry for you because you don't have a language. Like for some of us who are migrants from Africa, we have our languages. We are happy. But any African immigrant here, an expert, please speak your language the perfect way that you love it. And before I say bye for now, I want to say my name again. It has been me, Otako. And I would like to say bye in my mother tongue language. Banamba siwire. Mwebali kuwuliriza. Edwin, maybe you want to say bye to all dear listeners.
Mwebale nnyo kubeerako, na kutwagala, na kutuwuliriza.
Yeah, and Timo, you can also say bye to the dear listeners in your mother tongue language.
Gedwandi, word padola, aseulawi.
Yeah, thank you so much. It has been me, Otako, on Hear My True Story podcast. I'm always excited to have you on this wonderful podcast.
We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear my true story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.